Good Friday morning. Isn't it great? It's a Friday morning and it's not raining. It's been raining constantly here for most of the summer. So this is a pretty exciting day in our lives. We are ASMM Digital Small Business Connections, and we are the podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. The idea is to interview entrepreneurs who can come in and give you something you can take away and put to work in your business today. That's what we want. And the idea is also to help the entrepreneurs who come on the show. So if you're watching somebody, you really like them and you think, gosh, I could use their services, give them a call. It's a great way to help another small business owner. I want to remind you to please subscribe. We have a YouTube channel. If you can subscribe over there, that would be great. If you're listening to this and not watching it, then you can subscribe wherever you're listening to it, whether it's iTunes, whether it's iHeartRadio, wherever you're listening to it, just subscribe, pick us up, make sure that you can listen to us over and over again. We're on episode 70 and we're streaming live. We're streaming live on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. And why do I tell you this? I tell you this because I want you to ask questions. You have people on this show who are experts in their field and they can answer your questions live today. So do ask questions as we go. Do make comments. Do let us know what you're thinking. And shamelessly plug your business. If you have a small business and you're going to ask a question, tell us what the business is so we can go and check you out. That's a great way to do it. And today I have Rich Perry. He's the author of Bankroll Your Mind, and he is an expert on helping you get onto podcasts, helping you as a speaker. So it's good timing for your job in particular, Rich, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is a great time for people to utilize this downtime, this slow down to get themselves on podcasts and web shows just like this. Thanks, Ann.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, tell us a little more about what you do and why you started doing this.
I'm a communication, and what I do is I help people to craft their message and I empower them to deliver it, whether that's getting featured on podcasts and web shows like this, whether it's communicating with a larger audience, say at a speaking event, whether it's just sharing their message on social media. We all need to be sharing our message, especially right now. Use this
Exactly. But
opportunity to
I'm sorry, it cut off for a minute. So, yeah, and you're really good at this. I follow you on Twitter, which is how we connected, and you're really good at sharing your message. There's no doubt about what you do, but it's also not so in your face that you're like, oh my God, all this guy does is sell, right? So there's that fine line. You've got to say what you do without selling all the time. You've got to be a human being, and you're really good at being a human being.
thank you.
So. Yeah, it's harder than you think when you're talking about social media, right? So, all right, well, let's talk about that. So, how do people get featured on podcasts like this one or any? This one, somebody said, "Oh, Rich Perry's going to be on. He's a local guy, and he's going to be on Ann's big podcast." I'm like, well, I'm not sure how big we are. We literally are on episode 70. We just started in March, so but we're having fun. So, how do you get featured on podcasts?
So the first thing that you want to do is you want to research the podcasts that fit your niche. All right. There are millions of podcasts out there. And what you want to do is you want to go to those streaming services. You want to go to maybe Facebook. Your niche, and you want to start researching those. And then you want to start connecting with those hosts, just like you, or maybe the producers, and start getting yourself out there and start connecting with these people to position yourself as a potential guest to be on their show.
Yeah, and I've had people come to me in different ways. So I have had people come to me on Twitter and say, "Hey, I'd like." Carlos Gill did that. He saw me on Twitter and he said, "Hey, Ann, I want to be on your show." That's a great way to do it, right? But he knew exactly what I do. He does similar things, and so that was an easy fix. But there are other ways. You can do exactly what you said. Watch it, or you can do things like hire somebody who will help connect you. Do you do that as well? Connect people? Rich, we're having a big lag here. Can you hear me? Uh-oh. Rich, can you hear me? All right, I'm going to put a message in here for Whitney. Whitney, we're going to probably have to edit out some of this stuff. If you guys are still watching, give us a minute. I'm hoping Rich comes back. I'm hoping that his feed comes back, because for some reason we have lost him. I'm hoping you hear me. If it goes on much longer, we'll probably cancel and then come back another day and have, because I am so excited about having Rich on the show. He is a expert in his field, and right now being on podcast is a great way to get your message out there. It's why we started this podcast. So Rich, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Oh, awesome. All right, we lost you for a minute there. So what I was saying was that it's a great way to get people, to be on a podcast is wonderful, right? It's a great way to get in front of people. So we missed a little bit of what you said. You can find them on reach out to their producers. You can reach out to them directly. Are there other ways in particular? Do you like agencies or things like that might be helpful to them?
A lot of ways to reach out to podcasters, but I mean, one of the easiest ways is to just be a fan of their show and reach out to the person directly. You can reach out, you can have a PR agent, you can have, your assistant, but one of the ways that I teach my clients, and it's the thing that I do, is just reach out to the podcaster directly. Just be a fan of their show, know what it is that they're doing, and then reach out to that person directly and show how you can be show.
Absolutely. And that is my favorite. When somebody says, oh my gosh, I love that episode that you did with, Carlos Gill. And they really start talking about it and they're like, and I think I have something to offer. That's when I get excited. I get really excited when they're already excited about the show, or if I've seen them leave comments before, right? They've left comments and then they come back. It's a great way to get on a show. So tell us, how do you craft that pitch? How do you work to come up with something that you can say, this is what I'm going to talk about?
So is the first thing you want to do is be a fan of that show. Listen to a couple episodes. Do your research on that particular show. When you pitch that podcaster, you want to prove that, hey, I've listened to your show before. I've listened to this episode. I've listened to that episode. You might even want to flatter them a little bit and say, hey, I just listened to your past episode or 2 episodes ago, and I took these valuable points from that guest or what it was that you were saying. Then the next thing you want to do is show that you are an expert in your field. You might segue that a little bit by talking about yourself casually. It doesn't have to be this hard sell, but a casual transition into what it is that you do and how you are an expert. Then you might want to segue again into showing, hey, I'm Rich Perry. I'm a communication strategist. I'm an author. And these are the things that I talk about. And I think that I can be a valuable guest to your show. And here are some possible talking points that we might want to discover. From there, then you'll want to say, I'm open to communication. I'm open to having a dialogue. Would you like to arrange a discussion on how I can be a valuable guest to your show for your listeners? Please let me know. And that would be a way of just crafting that pitch.
Absolutely.
Salesy.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And I think one of the things that people don't think about, and I've watched you do, is building their own platform before you do it, right? So you come on the show and you've got 14,000 followers on Twitter. It's much easier for me to say, oh yeah, I'm going to have Rich Perry on my show. He's got a following, right? He's clearly an expert in this field because people are following him for that. So mentioning that's not going to hurt you either, right?
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, letting people know, hey, not only am I going to come, but I'm going to also bring listeners because people do listen to what I have to say. So that's a good thing as well. So, well, let's talk about, and I'm so sorry, we do keep cutting in and out. So hopefully you're hearing me, but let's talk a little bit about preparing for an interview as you go in. What are some of your tips for preparing for an interview? Oh, I think we've totally lost him. Hopefully he's going to come back in just a minute. I'm going
Build
to give
that
you,
relationship. Just like you and I were connecting on Twitter long before you asked me to be on your show, you and I had a familiar relationship through Twitter. We met through a mutual friend. Something you want to establish. So you want to establish communication, you want to establish that rapport. Another thing that you also want to do is be prepared. Go into that interview prepared with what it is that you want to say. I can remember vividly, unfortunately, a couple episodes of a different podcast that I hosted years ago, where we had some nightmarish guests that just weren't prepared. A bad episode. Now, right now, we're having these technical difficulties. It's unfortunate, but at least you and I both know what it is that we want to say, as opposed to someone just going on to a show and just umming and on and not really understanding the message that they want to get across to the audience. So definitely build that communication, build that rapport, establish that rapport with the host and the producer and the team, and then come prepared to deliver a premium message that is going to build value with the listener. At the end of the day, it's all about the listener. That's why they're there. They're not there for coffee time. They don't care about what you had, what I'm drinking for coffee right now. They don't care about that stuff. They want to know what is the information that this guy or this gal can deliver.
Absolutely. And part of that is making the job, because I know you have a podcast, making the job easy for your host, right? So one of the things that I was going to suggest is that you have to remember that most of the people who have a podcast are doing it as part of their business. This is a very small part of my business. And if a guest makes it difficult when it's time to start preparing, they don't send headshots, or they don't send questions, or they don't answer any, they give you a hard time right up until the very last minute, it makes it very difficult. This is not something I'm getting paid to do. It's something that I'm doing. And being a guest means being a guest, being a good guest, right? And so that's something that it came as a surprise to me how often it is that somebody will ask to be on the show, or we invite them on the show, and then it's like pulling teeth to get information from them, to promote them, or to find out what we're going to ask. Or sometimes they come on with exactly what you just said, not prepared, because you don't even know, well, what do you want to talk about? Do you want to talk about a book? Do you want to talk about, what is the subject that we're talking about? I actually had somebody say, oh, go ahead.
You go ahead, and then I'll ask if I can add a quick point to that.
Yeah. So, well, somebody said to me, I was like, I really do need your questions. We're going live tomorrow. I need to know what you want to talk about. And he said, read my book. I was like, okay. Anyway, so you add to that.
The point that I wanted to make, to go on what you just said, and is my podcast in particular is different than many podcasts out there, in that interview style podcast like you and I are.
Oh, Rich, we're cutting out. So I'm going to, as soon as you come back, I want you to go back to this, because I am really interested in what you have to say. I cannot believe we're having these technical difficulties. It's making me crazy. All right, there you are. So you said your podcast is different than many podcasts because?
I'm sorry, I just lost you. Say it again, please.
You said your podcast is different than many podcasts because, and you were going to tell me why.
Isn't an interview style podcast like this one. It's a 10-minute mentor. So we have 10 minutes for the guest to deliver a premium message. So when guests, and I give them a PDF that explains everything, what the show's about, the flow of it, the time breakdown. So to your point, Anne, when a guest doesn't come prepared to deliver that message in 10 minutes or less for my show, it certainly makes things a lot difficult, just like you were saying a moment ago.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can't imagine that, because you're really giving them the whole show. Here, take it. And when that
Mm-hmm.
happens, it really does mess you up, and it wastes your time, which you don't have a lot of, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. So let's talk about positioning yourself. And I want to say something as we go on. I would literally, if it were anybody else, I would say, oh my gosh, let's reschedule this. But this is Rich Perry, and I don't want to do that because I'm so excited about having you on. So we're going to have you again at another time because of these difficulties.
And I would be honored, and I apologize if it's on my end. I see a strong Wi-Fi signal. It might be just God's going against us today, but either way, I do appreciate it, and we're here to serve the audience.
Yes. So hopefully they'll stick around with us because I do think what you've got is really valuable. Somebody said to me one time, the reason you want to speak, you want to be the reason you want to be the expert, you want to be the person on the stage in a room. Because if you are, you're the one who's the expert, right? You want to be that person when other people are looking at you. So explain how you do that. How do you become the credible expert?
Well, a lot of it is just being consistent with delivering the same message over and over, okay? And there are experts. Right now, we have the advantage of utilizing technology to position ourselves to get our message out there. We can blog, we can vlog, we can be guests on podcasts, we can host our own podcast just like this. So these are all great ways for us to position ourselves as credible experts. Sure, absolutely write a book. You can absolutely be the speaker on the ways of putting ourselves out there. Right now, we're in the prospering right now, and there are some areas that are disadvantaged right now. But the one thing that we all have in common is that right now, we can all use technology, social media, to put ourselves out there. So I would encourage all of your viewers and listeners and to start utilizing social media, to start utilizing.
Oh, no. All right. So we've lost him. I'm hoping he pops back on. But what he is saying is so important. And what he does so well is to get the message out there and show that he's the expert. He's absolutely the expert in his field. And it's not, what he's doing is not an easy field. What he's talking about, people are scared. They're afraid to go on a show. They're afraid that they don't know enough. We've talked about this before, that most of us have the imposter syndrome. Most of us think that we're not as good as we need to be. And so we're afraid to be the one that stands up on the stage because they're going to all know more than we. I just did it. I will be honest with you. A couple of weeks ago, or maybe it was last week, I was on a podcast with a group of people about Google My Business. And I was so excited about being on the podcast because, Rich, I'm telling a story. Since you popped off for a minute, I'm telling a story about how often we think we're imposters, right? And so we're afraid to get on that stage. We're afraid to be in a podcast. So I was in a group last week and I told my husband, I don't know why they invited me because I don't think I know nearly as much as they do. And it was the most eye-opening event because I was like, after I sat through it and I was on the panel and I'm talking, I was like, oh, I think I knew as much as anybody in the room. So that was a nice little bump for me. But we do, this is what we do for a business. So of course we know our business. Mm-hmm. Right? Absolutely. So yes. So you are the expert, even if you feel like an imposter.
And a lot of it, I think what you were, what I caught you saying was we live in our own little bubble, and we're not sure what we know in comparison to other people, and it can cause that, self-doubt and things like that. But I would strongly encourage your listeners right now. You know a lot. You know more than you think you know. Start putting yourself out there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think all of us do that. And so I love that you say position yourself as a credible expert. And is this something that you help your clients with, is help them figure out how to have that confidence that they are the expert?
Absolutely. A lot of what I do with my clients is not only crafting that meaningful message, crafting that message that will be delivered, but also utilizing mindset tools and empowerment tools to put yourself out there, because it's a scary world out there. When you put yourself out there, you're opening yourself up to be judged, critiqued, laughed at by those that you know and those that you don't, and trolled and everything else. And I don't say that to scare your viewers, but it's the reality of the world that we live in. So find that confidence, find that courage to say, hey, you know what? I am that expert, and I know my business, and I know how I serve, and I'm going to put myself out there regardless of what you expert and you know.
All right, we lost you again for a second there. Rich, we are going to reschedule. I'm going to have Ethan jump on here, but I want to tell you a secret. So the next thing we're going to talk about is marketing your episode for optimal exposure. And even as we are talking, I know exactly what I'm going to do with this episode. We would have done something completely different before, but I'm going to put it out there and say, what happens when you have a dream guest come on and sorry, the shit hits the fan, right? What do you do? And this is how I'm going to market and say, oh my gosh, why did this happen? So you do need to market your episode. Talk a little bit about what you think people should do for that.
And real quick, I want to thank you for continuing with this episode. We've been having some technical difficulty. I've been there myself. I've had, and I really appreciate your kind words, your generous words. That really, really means a lot to me. You just made my day. Thank you so much.
Oh, good.
And I've been there where we have that person that we really wanted to come on the show or come speak to our group, or and it's raining outside, or there's technical difficulties, and what are you going to do? You're going to go with the flow. The example that I was taught growing up is every 4 years we watch the Olympics, and what happens when that Olympic gymnast is doing her somersaults and things like that. When she falls, she doesn't just walk away. She picks herself back up and she continues with the routine. And that right there is the defining moment, because a lot of people will simply walk away. Right now, we've had a few different snafus, but we continued rolling with the punches. We continued the routine because ultimately, you and I both know something that they're going to find.
Say that last part one more time,
because that is important.
There you go. And that's it. And it doesn't always go right. What you said, you know you've got something that's going to be of value. And so if you just stop, if we just stop, that's not fair. And there are people watching, there are people listening. So it's, put it out there. I think it's important. So let's go back. So back to this question. How do you market it? Whether you have a good episode or a bad episode, how do you get something out there and market it so that you get optimal exposure?
Continue to share it. It happened on, what is today? August 21st, 21st, right? Just because the episode happened today, we need to continue to our viewers. We need to share it on social media, on every single platform. Share it multiple days. Share it a couple weeks later. Just because it happened today, that person that you're connecting with tomorrow or a week from now hadn't heard this episode. It's going to be brand new to them. So share it with that person. Share it across all of your platforms. If you have an email list, whether it's one person or 1 million people, share it with your email list. Continue to promote it. And that's a great way to continue to market all the episodes that you do, rather than, it's a one and done thing. It's not a one and done thing. Continue to share it. Share it with all the people you come in contact with.
Absolutely. And you know, one thing I may have missed you saying this because we broke up a little bit, but put it on your website. You know, if you're doing a lot of these, put them on your website. Yeah, as a see me here. These are the other places I've been, because it gives it longevity. So that's a really good way to do it. Anywhere you can put it is a really, you know, it's going to help, and doing it over and over again, because people don't always see it the first time. So that's really important as well. Rich, I'm hoping you're still there. You've frozen here for a minute. I do know people can reach you at richperry.com, and you can follow him at Coach Rich Perry on Twitter. If you're on Twitter and you're not following him, you're missing out, because I'm telling you, he brightens my day every single day. I don't go through my posts without seeing him, and it really does make me happy. All right, Rich, do you? Oops, we've totally lost him again. All right. While he is off and hopefully coming back, I want to remind you that you can subscribe. You can subscribe on YouTube. You can subscribe on your podcast, wherever you are. I also want to ask you to share these videos. If you're on Facebook, you can hit share and you can hit watch party, and that really multiplies our viewers. And that's a huge help for us, because we are a small business. We're a digital marketing agency, and the pandemic has been good to us, honestly, but I have 5 employees. So I'd like to be growing and helping my employees grow. So anything you can do to help us out, share it, is a really easy way to do that. Rich, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. All right. I think he's frozen again. This has been the craziest episode, but we are going to do it again. I'm going to bring him on, and hopefully we'll have less technical difficulties next time. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and for putting up with all the difficulties. I really appreciate it. Take care. Bye-bye.